Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're not feeling too sleepy after your lunch. We're going to get you very active in your minds, if not in your legs, this afternoon. So make sure you stay awake and help yourself to. Oh, there's no caffeine left. This is a disaster.
There is coffee coming mid-afternoon.
Excellent. This is good. This is good. So I am here to just introduce this afternoon's session. We are as excited about evaluation as Scott is about data, so be warned. I'm also here to introduce the speakers, and really, I'm just here to keep them to time. So that's my job. So my name's Fiona. I'm from Bristol Business School, and I work very closely with Andrew Darnton. Just to introduce the three of us, Nick Cavell is a director of an independent public health consultancy and a research associate of University of Oxford's Department of Public Health, and he's an expert in evidence planning and evaluating population approaches to promoting physical activity. And Andrew is also an independent researcher, specialising in measuring and making social change. He's the author of ISM, which is the Scottish Government's behaviour change tool of choice, and co-creator of the revaluation tool, which you'll hear more about this afternoon. So I'm just telling you that to let you know that you're in safe hands, okay? And before I introduce them, I think it's worth taking a moment or two to think about evaluation and what it's all about. We use the word evaluation a lot. It's part and parcel of what we do. But why are we doing it? What's the purpose? And what are we trying to get out of it? On the one hand, evaluation is very much about identifying what works, producing evidence for collective learning, and so that we can do things based on what we already know. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And we know it's a settled view. Everyone agrees that evaluation should be at the heart of planning and implementation right from the beginning. It's no longer something that you just tack on at the end. And the move towards evaluation and evidence-based practice, certainly in policy making, which happened in the kind of early 90s, is a very positive move. It's much better to do things based on what we know rather than just pick something out of the air. But we do still tend to have fairly fixed ideas about evaluation and evidence. And we tend to presume that the kind of evidence we're reaching for is established, that those metrics are something that we can't critique, that we can't think about. So we're here really to introduce you to a new way of thinking about evaluation. And although we agree that asking what works is important, we're going to ask you whether it's enough. And does it really constitute learning, particularly when you're working across a complex system? And in any case, what exactly does it mean to work? What works for who? For what? And this kind of debate about the type of evidence that we can produce and the type of evidence that's really meaningful mirrors very much into my world, which is academic research. My background is behaviour change. And so when I do research, when my colleagues in behaviour change do research, we're really trying to inform policy making around behaviour change. And you'd imagine that policymakers would take evidence, all kinds of evidence from all kinds of areas, all kinds of evaluations, and make sense of those and feed those into their own learning. But that isn't the case, sadly. Policymakers tend to favour particular kinds of evidence that are produced using particular methodologies. And there's a hierarchy of what is considered to be rigorous evidence. And all that means is that particular kinds of evidence are funded more and done more. And that means that we actually get we begin to get a skewed vision about what the problem is and what is going on. And we don't get a full sense of the complex situation that we're working in, and no more so than in physical activity and obesity, which is highly complex. So we're inviting you this afternoon to take a really critical and innovative perspective on evaluation. What are you missing? What could you be missing if you keep the metrics that are the established way of working and the established way of measuring what you're doing? Sometimes, even though the evidence that you're producing is rigorous, it might not be asking the right questions. And it might not be capturing the full value of what you're all doing, your work. So evaluation should show what's going on. not just what works according to these established metrics. It should produce evidence that takes into account the impact of collaborative and networked practice across a complex system. And so what we're going to take you through this afternoon is a few steps towards thinking in a slightly different way about evaluation. Nick's going to talk about what we know already, the importance of drawing on existing evidence and producing it. He's going to introduce the ideas around limitations of evaluating individual interventions and start you thinking in a more systemic way. And then Andrew, after that, will talk about two different styles of evaluation and introduce you to a tool for setting objectives for measuring the full value of what you're doing across a complex system. And we'll get you working on your tables around that. So if I can introduce Nick now.